Hello there and welcome to Science for Bedtime. I'm so glad you found your way here. Wherever you are right now, tucked beneath a soft blanket, resting your head against a cool pillow, or simply letting your body grow heavy and still, you are exactly where you are meant to be. There is nothing left to do tonight, nothing to remember, nothing to carry. All you have to do is listen and let your breath grow slow. Tonight, we are going to drift together toward one of the most ancient and breathtaking places on this gentle earth. A place carved not by hurry, not by force, but by the quiet, patient movement of water over millions of years. We are going to spend our evening with the Grand Canyon, that vast, sacred ribbon of stone and silence stretching across the warm heart of the American Southwest. There is something deeply restful about knowing that the earth has always been this patient. That beauty this immense can be made by simply letting time flow like water. If these slow journeys bring you peace, we would love for you to like this video and subscribe to Science for Bedtime. It helps us keep making these quiet, science-filled nights just for you. Now, settle in. Let your shoulders drop. Let your eyes grow soft and heavy. And let's begin this slow and soothing journey together. And so we move gently inward now, the way the canyon itself invites you to descend, one quiet step at a time, deeper into its warmth and shadow. Each fact we visit tonight is a small, glowing stone along the path, worn smooth by wonder and time. There is no rush here, no destination to reach. Only the soft unfolding of one extraordinary place, one breath at a time. Let the words wash over you like warm canyon air at dusk, and allow your body to sink a little deeper into stillness with every sentence. The canyon has been waiting 5 million years for this moment. And so, very gently, we begin. The Grand Canyon stretches for 277 miles across the warm Colorado Plateau in Arizona, a distance so long that if you laid it across the eastern United States, it would reach from New York all the way to Chicago. But its true magic lies not in its length, but in its quiet. Stand at the rim on a still morning, and the world below seems suspended in amber light, layered in pinks and reds and soft lavenders, each color belonging to a different age of the earth. The canyon is wide enough to swallow an entire small country, up to 18 miles across in places, and yet despite its great enormity, it holds a deeply intimate quality, the way a great ancient forest makes you feel gently held, not overwhelmed. You are never small here. You are exactly the right and most perfect size for wonder. 1 mile. That is how far the canyon descends beneath the soft, open sky of Arizona. 1 quiet mile of layered stone, shadow, and light, alternating like a slow, breathing tide. Clouds sometimes drift below the rim on certain mornings, floating like white silk ribbons between the canyon walls, as though the sky itself has come down to rest for a while. If you stood at the very top and let your eyes travel slowly, patiently downward, you would pass through 2 billion years of Earth's history before reaching the river at the bottom. Each ledge, each terrace, each narrow band of color is a different age, a different long and quiet chapter. And the feeling that washes over you is not dizziness, but a kind of profound and gentle peace. The earth has always known what it was doing. It simply took its time. And so tonight, can you? Far below, winding through the deepest shadows of the canyon floor, the Colorado River moves with the quiet, steady purpose of something that has always known where it is going. From the rim, it appears almost impossibly thin, a silver thread, a gleaming ribbon catching the last of the afternoon light between its banks. But step closer to the water, and the river reveals itself as a wide, powerful, gentle presence, clear green in calm stretches, a deep churning turquoise where it bends around ancient stone. For millions of years, the Colorado carried sand and stone and time itself through this corridor, slowly and patiently carving the world into the shape we see tonight. It did not rush. It simply persisted the way sleep persists, returning night after night, soft and insistent, until the body finally surrenders to it completely. Let the river's patience carry you somewhere gentle now, The Grand Canyon, as we know it today, began forming somewhere between 5 and 6 million years ago, a span of time so vast it barely fits inside the human imagination. 5 million years ago, our distant ancestors were just beginning to walk upright on the African savanna. The dinosaurs had been gone for 60 million years already. Oceans rose and fell, continents drifted like slow boats through geologic time, and through all of it, quietly, persistently, the Colorado River kept carving, one grain of sand at a time, one thin season after another. 5 million years of water simply doing what water does, following the path of least resistance, flowing downward, finding its way home. There is something deeply soothing about that image. The world's most spectacular landscape created not by force or violence, but by the simple, quiet, unhurried determination of water. Water that never worried, water that never stopped. At the very bottom of the Grand Canyon, beneath all the sandstones and limestones and shales, lies a rock called Vishnu schist. Dark, almost black, folded into ribbons of glittering crystal by heat and pressure, nearly 2 billion years ago. 2 billion years. Press your palm against it and you are touching a world that existed before complex life had even learned to breathe. Before forests, before oceans filled with fish, before any sound had been made by any living creature on this entire planet. The Vishnu schist is among the oldest exposed rock on Earth, and it sits at the bottom of the canyon like a quiet foundation stone for everything that followed. Touching it, you feel the weight of all that deep and slow time pressing gently into your chest. Not heavy, but grounding, like a warm hand placed softly on your back in the dark. Think of the canyon walls as the pages of the Earth's most patient autobiography. Each horizontal band of color, the creamy Kaibab limestone at the top, the brick-red hermit shale below it, the rippled Coconino sandstone, the warm Supai group further down. Each one was laid down in a completely different era of our planet's long story. Some of these layers formed at the bottom of ancient seas. Others were once vast, wind-blown deserts. Some were mudflats along rivers that no longer exist, in landscapes that have been gone for hundreds of millions of years. And yet here they are, stacked and quiet, holding all of that memory in their stone. Scientists call it the Great Unconformity, a place in the canyon walls where 300 million years of rock simply vanishes, as though the Earth took a long, slow breath and gently forgot to write those centuries down. Water is patient in ways that no living creature can fully understand. It does not hurry, it does not plan, it simply follows gravity, finding the lowest point, the softest seam, the gentlest slope, and then it works there, day after day, century after century, dissolving and lifting one grain of stone at a time. The Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon not through any violent event, but through the kind of steady, faithful persistence that is almost meditative to contemplate. Rain helped, ice helped, wind helped, carrying tiny grains of sand against the canyon walls like a soft, endless whisper. The whole canyon is a lesson in the power of gentleness over time. You do not need to be forceful to create something beautiful. You only need to keep returning, day after day, as water does, as sleep does, softly, faithfully, and without fail, until the stone gives way. The south rim of the Grand Canyon sits at an elevation of around 7,000 feet, where the air carries that cool, clear quality found only at altitude, a freshness that fills the lungs like a quiet gift. Ponderosa pines grow thick and tall along the rim's edge, their long needles catching the breeze with a soft oceanic sigh. The views from the south rim stretch for miles in every direction, an ocean of stone and color and moving shadow. In the early morning, the canyon below remains dark and blue, like the bottom of a deep, still lake. By midday, the walls glow in burnt orange and gold, and in the evening, as the sun dips low and long over the western plateau, everything turns soft and rose-pink and extraordinarily still. The south rim is the most visited place in all of the canyon, and every visitor arrives and immediately slows down. The north rim sits about 1,000 feet higher than the south rim, and it is a different world entirely. Quieter, wilder. Far fewer footsteps have wandered its trails, and the silence there is thick enough to feel a physical presence, like warm wool pressed gently around your ears. Aspen trees grow along its meadows, their pale silver trunks catching moonlight like slender candles, their leaves trembling at the faintest breath of wind with that soft, papery whisper that sounds like distant rain on a rooftop. Elk move through the forest at dusk, unhurried and large and gentle, their breath rising in small clouds in the cool evening air. The North Rim is only open part of the year. Heavy snows close its roads each winter. So when you are there, you feel as though you have been given access to something rare and quietly sacred. A place meant entirely for stillness. There is a particular quality to light at the Grand Canyon just after sunrise, a warmth that is unlike any other light in the world. As the sun clears the eastern horizon, its first long rays reach across the plateau and spill down into the canyon's upper walls, painting the topmost layers in deep, molten gold, while the depths below remain cool and blue and full of sleeping shadow. The canyon seems to wake slowly, the light traveling downward in gentle stages, illuminating each terrace like a soft lamp being turned on in a long, quiet corridor. Visitors who wake early enough to witness this moment often stand in complete silence, hands loose at their sides, breathing slowly, unable to speak. It is not possible to feel rushed in the presence of a canyon sunrise. The light itself is an invitation to slow down, to receive, to simply stand and be completely present. If sunrise is the canyon's gentle awakening, then sunset is its slow and magnificent lullaby. In the last hour before dusk, the light falls at an angle so warm and low that the canyon walls seem to glow from within, as though all that stored sunlight from millions of years is finally, softly releasing itself into the evening air. The reds deepen to burgundy and rust. The pinks bloom into rose and coral and the warmest shades of gold. The purples emerge from shadow like something half remembered from a dream. Then, quite gradually, the light fades and the canyon fills with a soft blue-gray dusk, cooling and still, and the first stars appear above the rim like tiny, gentle punctuation marks in the darkening sky. Visitors often describe the moment after sunset at the canyon as the most peaceful they have ever known. The day is over. The stone breathes out. The world grows quiet. The Grand Canyon is a certified international dark sky park, one of the darkest places remaining in the continental United States. On a moonless night, standing at its rim, you can see the full arch of the Milky Way stretched from one horizon to the other, so dense and luminous it seems almost solid, like a river of quiet light suspended between the stars. With the naked eye alone, you can see thousands of individual stars, clusters and nebulae, and the faint, soft smudge of distant galaxies. Rangers lead stargazing programs on clear nights, and first-time visitors often find themselves sitting down on the warm stone rim, head tilted all the way back, not speaking, just breathing and looking upward. The canyon below is invisible in the darkness, only a vast felt presence, a depth that reminds the tired body it is finally time to rest. The stars whisper, "You are home. Sleep now." Scientists who study sound have visited the Grand Canyon and found something remarkable. In certain places within its walls, the ambient noise level drops below 10 decibels, quieter than almost anywhere else on the surface of the Earth. The canyon seems to absorb sound. Its walls, its layered terraces, its deep pockets and alcoves of stone swallow the world's noise and hold it gently, returning only the softest echo of wind or distant birdsong. People who have sat quietly within the canyon for a long time report that the silence begins to feel like a warm presence, not empty but full, the way deep sleep feels full rather than simply absent. There is a kind of healing in great silence. The nervous system softens, the breath slows, the mind, no longer searching for anything to hear, releases its quiet vigilance and settles deeply. And in that settling, something sweet and restful and ancient begins. One of the most magnificent sights at the Grand Canyon is also one of the most unexpected. The California condor, drifting on invisible currents of warm air high above the canyon walls, its wingspan stretching nearly 10 feet from graceful tip to tip. These birds were once nearly extinct. By 1987, only 27 remained alive in the entire world. Through decades of patient care and dedicated human kindness, their numbers slowly beautifully recovered. Today, over 300 condors soar above the American Southwest, and the Grand Canyon is one of the finest places on Earth to watch them glide. They ride the thermal currents rising from sun-warmed stone without a single wing beat, sometimes just floating, tilting, vast and dark and effortlessly at ease. Watching a condor soar is its own kind of meditation. The body follows its movement and grows still. The breath matches the slow, wide arc of the wings. Along the canyon's rim, particularly in the quiet morning hours before the sun climbs high, mule deer emerge from the ponderosa pine forest and step softly toward the edge of the world. Their ears are enormous and expressive, tuned to frequencies we cannot hear, swiveling gently towards sounds carried on the warm morning breeze. They move with an unhurried grace that is deeply restful to witness, each step placed with care, their dark eyes soft and unafraid. Mule deer have lived alongside the canyon for thousands of years, navigating its trails and terraces with a quiet confidence born of long and deep familiarity. To watch one stand at the rim in early morning light, looking out over the vast and layered distance with no particular urgency, is to receive a wordless lesson in simply being present. They are not going anywhere, and for a moment, beautifully, gratefully, neither are you. Ravens are the true and ancient residents of the Grand Canyon, and they have been there far longer than any human visitor. Glossy and black and extraordinarily intelligent, they ride the canyon's updrafts with obvious pleasure, rolling and tumbling and gliding on the warm rising air with what can only be described as deep embodied joy. Scientists who study ravens have documented their remarkable intelligence. They recognize individual human faces, solve multi-step puzzles, and communicate in a complex and beautiful system of calls, clicks, and soft warbles. At the Grand Canyon, they often perch on the railings it overlooks, tilting their iridescent heads at visitors with an expression of calm, bright curiosity. There is something deeply comforting about their presence. This ancient intelligence that has been watching over the canyon for so long, knowing its every season and shadow and mood. They are quiet, dark-feathered guardians of a beautiful place. Always present, always at home. Along the south rim, ponderosa pines grow tall and still in the clear, high-altitude air, their long needles catching the breeze with a soft oceanic sigh. But it is their bark that holds the most quiet magic. Mature ponderosa pines have bark the color of warm cinnamon and vanilla, and on a sunny afternoon, if you press your nose gently close to the bark, you will catch a scent that is unmistakably sweet, warm, and deeply comforting. Scientists believe the vanilla fragrance comes from chemical compounds released as the bark warms in the sun, entirely natural, entirely free, one of the most calming things you can encounter in any forest. The ponderosa pines of the Grand Canyon rim form a kind of gentle, fragrant cathedral around you, their trunks glowing amber in the late afternoon light, their canopies whispering far overhead in a language made entirely of wind and rest and quiet belonging. Descend into the canyon from the cool ponderosa forest of the rim, and the world transforms around you, growing warmer and drier and wilder with every step. By the time you reach the inner canyon, those deep, sun-baked terraces closest to the river, the landscape has become a desert garden of extraordinary beauty. Prickly pear cactus spreads across the red stone slopes in flat, paddle-shaped clusters, blooming in brilliant magenta and yellow in spring. Flowers so vivid they seem almost impossible against the dusty earth. Agave plants rise from the rock in great rosettes of fleshy, gray-green leaves, patient and slow-growing, sometimes waiting 20 years before sending up a single towering flower stalk, then blooming magnificently once, and releasing their seeds to the warm desert wind. These plants have learned the canyon's deepest lesson, that patience is not wasted time, that waiting is its own beautiful, abundant form of becoming. One of the most remarkable things about the Grand Canyon is the range of climates it holds within a single landscape. On a warm summer day at the south rim, the temperature might rest at a gentle and comfortable 70 degrees Fahrenheit, but descend to the canyon floor a full mile below, and the temperature can reach well above 100 degrees, a completely different world, hot and still and shimmering with heat. In winter, the south rim may be wrapped in soft white snow, while the inner canyon remains mild and warm. This dramatic range exists because of how the canyon's great depth traps heat and how altitude cools the upper layers. In a single day, you can walk through the ecological equivalent of traveling from Canada to Mexico, from pine forest to desert scrub to warm riverside in just a few hours. The canyon contains entire worlds within itself, stacked quietly, patiently, one above the other. When rain comes to the Grand Canyon, especially during the warm summer monsoon season, it transforms the landscape into something almost otherworldly. Clouds build rapidly over the plateau in the afternoon, great towers of white and gray rising into the blue sky with remarkable speed. Then the rain falls, heavy and warm and sweetly scented, and the canyon fills with a soft, rolling mist that drifts through the corridors of stone like slow, wandering breath. Waterfalls appear from nowhere, thin silver threads cascading down the red and orange cliffs, feeding into small streams that run warm and red with mineral-rich soil. The smell of rain on hot stone, called petrichor, is one of the most universally beloved scents known to science, triggering something deep and ancient in the human brain, something connected to shelter and safety and the arrival of life-giving water. After the rain, the whole canyon glows, clean and quiet and renewed. In winter, the south rim receives snowfall, and the transformation it brings to the canyon is nothing short of breathtaking. The warm red and orange walls rise from a pure white foreground, each ledge and terrace holding a clean rim of snow that glitters in the low winter sun like powdered starlight. The canyon is much quieter in winter, fewer footsteps, more thoughtfulness, and the silence at the rim on a cold, clear December morning has a crystalline quality, as though the air itself has been purified. Elk move through the snow-covered forest, their breath rising in pale, soft clouds. Ravens, glossier than ever in the cold, hop along the icy path edges, perfectly unbothered and perfectly content. The canyon in winter feels like a secret shared between the earth and those few who are patient enough to arrive in the cold. It is slower, stiller, and in that stillness, it offers something the busy summer never quite can. The Colorado River, as it flows through the inner canyon, carries a color that changes with the season and the mood of the sky above. In dry periods and calm stretches, it runs a deep, glowing turquoise green, so clear in places that you can see the river stones beneath the surface, worn smooth and perfectly round over centuries. After heavy rains upstream, it shifts to a deep reddish brown, rich with the sediment that gave the river its Spanish name, Colorado, meaning colored red. In the early morning, the river reflects the pale gold of the rising sun. At dusk, it carries the canyon's last light on its surface like a slow, breathing mirror. And in the deep blue hour before full dark, it becomes invisible. Just a sound, a low and gentle rushing far below, like the soft turning of the world itself in its vast and ancient sleep. For more than 800 years, the Havasupai people have made their home within the Grand Canyon, one of the only Native American tribes in the United States who still live inside a national park's boundaries. Their village of Supai sits in a side canyon called Havasu Canyon, surrounded by deep red walls and turquoise waterfalls that tumble over travertine ledges into pools of extraordinary luminous blue-green water. The Havasupai call themselves the people of the blue-green water, and the name carries the whole story of who they are. Their identity is woven into this landscape as the canyon walls themselves. To live within the Grand Canyon, generation after generation, is to understand it not as a destination, but as a home, a living, breathing, sacred place that holds the memory of your ancestors in its stone and the sound of everything your people have ever known. The canyon holds their stories tenderly. If sunrise and sunset bring the canyon its most dramatic and colorful light, midday brings something entirely different, a clarity, a bleached and brilliant brightness that reveals the texture and structure of the walls in extraordinary detail. The light at noon falls straight down into the canyon, illuminating deep folds and recesses, narrow side canyons, spiraling stone formations that remain hidden in the slanted light of morning. At midday, the canyon looks almost prehistoric, vast and quiet and ancient in a way that bypasses the thinking mind and speaks to something older within us. The heat rises in visible waves from the stone terraces far below. The air above shimmers gently, And yet, even in this intensity, there is a strange and deep peace, a surrendering quality, as though all of the world's movement has simply paused, and only the stone and the warm, still silence remain to keep you company. Perhaps the most extraordinary thing the Grand Canyon gives to every person who stands at its rim is this: a temporary but profound dissolving of ordinary time. With 2 billion years of stone laid out before you in calm, horizontal bands of color, the ticking of the daily clock simply loses its urgency. What does it matter what time it is? The canyon has never known. It has only the deep, unhurried rhythm of water and stone, of light moving slowly from east to west and back again. The human brain, which evolved to worry about schedules and futures and unfinished conversations, grows genuinely quiet in the presence of geologic time. Something older and softer takes over. The breath deepens. The body relaxes its long-held tension. The mind releases its grip on the day. And you find yourself, without trying, already resting in the calm and vast and generous present. Already softly at peace. The Grand Canyon was declared a national monument in 1908 by President Theodore Roosevelt, who had visited its rim and stood in complete silence for a long time before speaking. When he finally found words, he said something that has echoed through more than a century of human hearts: that the canyon should be left as it is, that you cannot improve upon it, that it belongs not to any one generation, but to all generations yet to come. Roosevelt was not a quiet man by nature. His life was famously energetic and loud, but the canyon stilled him. It has that quality. It finds the rushed places within a person and smooths them out, the way the river finds the roughest stone and polishes it into something round and luminous. Every person the canyon has ever stilled carries a little of its peace with them afterward. A quiet deposit left by the deep and patient earth. The ancient seabed at the top of the canyon tells a story of extraordinary transformation. The Kaibab limestone, that pale cream-colored rock forming the topmost layer of the Grand Canyon's walls, was once the floor of a warm, shallow sea that covered this part of North America 270 million years ago. Within its stone, you can still find the fossilized remains of that ancient ocean, shells of creatures long vanished, the delicate spirals of ammonites, the scattered fragments of coral reefs that once swayed in warm prehistoric water. To hold a piece of Kaibab limestone is to hold the floor of a vanished sea, to feel the ocean in your hand on the edge of a desert. The earth has always been this generous with its transformations. It does not cling to what it was. It becomes and becomes and becomes again, slowly, beautifully, without resistance. Below the ancient seabed, there is a layer of coconino sandstone, pale cream to white, thick and smooth, formed from sand dunes that once stretched across a vast desert 275 million years ago. Within the coconino, scientists have found fossilized footprints, small, delicate trackways made by reptiles crossing the soft dune sand on some ancient afternoon, long before any human hand had written a single word. The footprints go in one direction and stop. Whatever creature made them walked on and into a world now utterly transformed, and yet here preserved in silence, pressed into stone, those small steps remain. The canyon is full of moments like this, ordinary instants from unimaginable depths of time, preserved with extraordinary care. A creature walked here once. The sand received their steps. The stone kept them. And millions of years later, in the soft quiet of this evening, someone is thinking of that small and ancient journey. The Bright Angel Trail is the most traveled path descending into the Grand Canyon, and for good reason. It follows a natural break in the canyon's geology, a fault line called the Bright Angel Fault, where the rock has shifted and worn into a gentler angle of descent. Walking the Bright Angel Trail is to travel through geological time in the most literal and physical way imaginable. Each downward step takes you deeper into the Earth's past, each layer of stone around you growing older and older as you descend. Rest stops along the trail are shaded by cottonwood trees, whose round pale leaves tremble constantly in the canyon's gentle updrafts with a sound like soft applause. Small springs emerge from the rock face, cool, clear water trickling from stone into the dry desert air, a gift from precipitation that fell on the plateau many years ago and traveled slowly, patiently downward through the rock to this very place. Water moves through the Grand Canyon's stone in ways that are invisible to the eye, but fundamental to the canyon's quiet life. Rain that falls on the Kaibab Plateau does not simply run off. Much of it seeps downward through the porous limestone, traveling through the rock in complete darkness for years, sometimes decades, before emerging as a spring somewhere in the canyon's walls. These springs are small oases of coolness and life, places where ferns grow in the otherwise dry stone, where tiny frogs cluster near moisture-darkened rock, where the air smells faintly of green and water even in the height of summer. The water remembers its journey through the stone, arriving cool and clean and tasting faintly of minerals gathered in the long, dark passage. There is something deeply meditative about this. Water taking the long, slow underground route, patient and unhurried, trusting that it will eventually arrive somewhere beautiful and necessary. Far below the canyon's popular rim trails, in the deep and sheltered inner gorge, lies a world that most visitors never see. A narrow corridor of ancient dark rock where the canyon grows dramatically tighter and the Colorado River rushes through with focused, powerful intent. The walls of the inner gorge are Vishnu schist and Zoroaster granite, rocks formed nearly 2 billion years ago by tremendous heat and pressure. Their surfaces streaked with veins of pink and white and gold crystal that glitter in the dim light. The air here is still and warm. The sound of the river fills every space. High overhead, far away, a thin strip of blue sky is visible between the dark walls, bright as a promise, distant as a dream. In the inner gorge, the Earth's deepest history presses close on all sides, ancient and warm and without judgment. You are held by the oldest stone on the continent. The Colorado River has carved not just one canyon, but an entire system of connected gorges, side canyons, alcoves and narrows that branch off the main corridor like the tributaries of an immense stone river delta. Many of these side canyons are unknown to casual visitors, hidden places with names like Elves Chasm and Deer Creek and the Cathedral Stairs, narrow corridors of pale pink and amber stone through which clear water flows over smooth sculpted rock into perfectly round pools of extraordinary, glowing blue-green. These hidden places carry a quality of profound seclusion, as though the canyon has built them specifically as quiet rooms within its vast stone house. Moss grows on the wet walls, light filters in from far overhead. Waterfalls fall from unseen heights in long, thin silver threads, their sound filling the narrow space like a gentle, continuous song. These places hold a silence so complete it feels alive. Among the many creatures that make their home in the canyon's warm stone corridors is the ringtail, a small, luminous mammal related to the raccoon, with enormous dark eyes and a long, boldly banded tail that curves behind it like a question mark made of shadow and moonlight. Ringtails are nocturnal, moving through the canyon's darkness with agility that seems almost impossible on such narrow ledges and vertical rock faces. Their enormous eyes gather every photon of available light, making the moonlit canyon as clear to them as full day. They hunt insects and small lizards along the rock walls, moving in near-perfect silence, leaving no trace but a few delicate paw prints in the soft dust of a canyon ledge. To be in the canyon at night and catch the reflected gleam of a ringtail's eyes watching you calmly from a rock above is to feel quietly and warmly that you are a welcome guest in someone else's beautiful home. The Grand Canyon is home to over 350 species of birds, a number that astonishes scientists given that the canyon is fundamentally a desert ecosystem. The secret lies in the canyon's extraordinary range of elevations and habitats, each supporting its own bird community. At the rim, western bluebirds flash through the ponderosa pines like small, living jewels of blue and burnt orange. In the transition zone below, white-throated swifts rocket through the air with breathtaking speed and precision, their calls a sharp, joyful chatter that echoes against the warm walls. Deep in the canyon, the melodious call of the canyon wren spirals downward in a cascade of clear, descending notes, one of the most beautiful sounds in the natural world. A liquid, slow-falling song that seems to have been composed specifically for these ancient stone corridors. To hear it in the warm stillness of the inner canyon is to understand completely and wordlessly what beauty feels like. The canyon wren's song deserves its own quiet moment of contemplation. It begins on a high, clear note, bright and clean as a drop of water on smooth stone, and then descends in a graceful, unhurried spiral, each note lower and softer than the last, until it fades into a gentle trill that seems to dissolve into the warm air itself. Scientists have noted that the canyon wren's descending song is uniquely suited to its environment. The notes carry beautifully through the stone corridors without echo distortion, drifting far into the deep shadows and warm recesses of the canyon walls. Hikers in the canyon often stop walking when they hear it. They stand still without deciding to, looking for the tiny brown bird perched somewhere invisible on the warm stone. And in that stopping, that quiet listening, the whole body pauses and softens. The canyon wren sings, and for a moment, everything inside you simply rests. Phantom Ranch sits at the very bottom of the Grand Canyon, beside the cool, clear waters of Bright Angel Creek, where it meets the Colorado River, the only lodging facility within the canyon itself, reachable only by foot, mule, or river raft. It was designed in 1922 by the architect Mary Coulter, who drew on the canyon's natural stone and the spirit of the desert Southwest to create a small collection of low stone cabins and a central canteen that feel, somehow, exactly right. At Phantom Ranch, the stars are visible through the narrow strip of sky between the canyon walls, brilliant and dense and almost impossibly close. The sound of the creek fills the night air. Cottonwood trees rustle softly overhead. The temperature is warm and still. Everything unnecessary has been left behind on the rim, a full mile above. At Phantom Ranch, the world becomes very simple and very beautiful, and sleep comes easily and completely. The Colorado River through the Grand Canyon contains some of the most famous whitewater rapids in the world. Places with names like Lava Falls and Horn Creek and Crystal Rapid, where the river narrows and accelerates over ancient volcanic rock, and the water becomes a thundering, brilliant white chaos of foam and spray. River rafting through the Grand Canyon takes between 7 and 21 days depending on pace, and those who have made the journey describe it as one of the most transformative experiences of their lives. But between the rapids, the river returns to its calm, green, reflective self, drifting in wide, still pools where the canyon walls tower overhead in absolute cathedral silence. Those quiet stretches between the rapids are perhaps the most peaceful places on Earth. Smooth water, ancient stone, the sound of nothing but the gentle river and the wide and breathing sky. The geology of the Grand Canyon includes something scientists call the Great Unconformity, a boundary in the rock layers where nearly 300 million years of geological record simply does not exist. One layer of stone was laid down roughly 525 million years ago. The layer directly above it formed only 270 million years ago. 300 million years of rock, an almost incomprehensible span of time, quietly missing. What happened? Erosion, most likely. Ancient mountains rose and wore slowly away over eons, their stone carried off by water and wind into distant seas, leaving nothing behind. The Great Unconformity is visible in the canyon's walls as a flat, clean line, a boundary between two different ages of the Earth's long story. Scientists touch it with gentle, reverent fingers. 300 million years contained in the width of a thin, smooth line. Time is vast, and tonight, it is yours to drift through freely. In the late afternoon, when the sun has moved to the western sky and its light comes sideways across the canyon walls, shadows begin to fill the deep vertical folds and side canyons like slow, dark water rising. The contrast between sunlit wall and shadowed alcove becomes dramatic and painterly, areas of brilliant amber and rose gold pressing against pools of deep blue-gray shadow with extraordinary precision. Photographers from around the world travel to the Grand Canyon for these light conditions, and they stand at overlooks for hours, waiting for the exact angle, the exact depth of color, the exact balance of light and shadow that will allow the canyon to reveal its fullest, most layered beauty. But what photography can never entirely capture is the feeling. Standing in the cooling air, the low sun warm on your face, the canyon below deepening slowly into evening, a profound and wordless, knowing that you are witnessing something true and extraordinary and permanent. The Colorado River enters the Grand Canyon at Lee's Ferry in northern Arizona, and for the next 277 river miles, it flows through a world that is, in many places, entirely hidden from the sky. Overhanging walls, narrow gorges, enormous boulders deposited by ancient landslides, the river moves through them all with fluid, patient grace, finding its path through obstacle after obstacle without pause, without anxiety, without any doubt about its ultimate destination. Geologists who study the Colorado River speak about it with something close to reverence, not because of its power, though it is powerful, but because of its extraordinary persistence. The river did not carve the Grand Canyon in a moment of violence. It carved it in 10,000 quiet moments multiplied by 5 million years. Each bend in the river, each smooth curve of polished stone, each gentle eddy where the water circles slowly in a sleepy spiral, all of it made by persistence, by patience, by the daily faith of water. Sunrise at Mather Point on the South Rim is one of the most quietly attended rituals on Earth. Every morning in every season, people gather there before dawn, wrapped in jackets and blankets, holding warm cups of coffee, standing close together against the cool, dark air, and simply wait. They do not talk much. They face east, toward the invisible horizon, and wait. Then the sky pales. Then the first thin thread of gold appears along the far rim. Then the light comes, slowly, warmly, patiently, spilling down the canyon's eastern walls in a great, slow tide of color. And every person watching, regardless of where they came from, regardless of what they believe or what troubles they carry, stands in that light and is, for a few minutes, genuinely still. The canyon teaches this every morning without fail, that stillness is not something you achieve. It is something you receive when you simply decide to wait for it. Fossils found within the Grand Canyon's stone layers tell a rich, slow story of life's long journey on this planet. In the Redwall limestone, formed 340 million years ago in a warm, shallow tropical sea, scientists have found the remains of crinoids, delicate flower-like creatures that waved their feathery arms in ancient currents, filtering particles of food from water that no longer exists. In the Muav limestone below, trilobites, those ancient armored arthropods with their elegant segmented bodies and gentle many-faceted eyes, left their marks in stone for 500 million years. Each fossil is a small, preserved gesture from a creature that lived fully and completely in its own time, on a planet that was younger and stranger and still deeply recognizably beautiful. Life has always found its way. Life has always persisted, and it has always in its own time found rest. The bright Angel Shale, a layer of soft blue-gray and greenish rock visible in the mid-canyon walls, was formed from ancient seafloor mud, compressed and lithified over 500 million years into the quiet stone we see today. Its gentle blue-gray color is unlike anything else in the canyon, softer, cooler, more restful than the vivid reds and oranges of the surrounding layers. In this layer, scientists have found trilobite tracks, the preserved pathways of creatures moving across an ancient muddy seafloor, their legs leaving 2 parallel rows of small, regular impressions in soft mud that hardened into stone and has held those footsteps ever since. 500 million years of faithfully kept memory, the stone has never forgotten a single thing. And tonight, as the light fades and the canyon grows quiet, the bright Angel Shale sits in its cool blue stillness, holding everything that was ever gently laid upon it. The canyon's side canyons are among its most intimate and sheltered spaces, narrow corridors of warm stone that branch off the main canyon, like quiet thoughts branching from a slow and peaceful dream. One of the most beloved is Havasu Canyon, home of the Havasupai people and their extraordinary waterfalls. Havasu Falls drops 30 feet over a ledge of creamy travertine into a pool of water so impossibly blue-green it seems more like a painting than a natural thing. The color comes from high concentrations of calcium carbonate dissolved in the water, which scatter light in the same wavelengths that make tropical seas glow turquoise. Swimming in Havasu Falls pool, the water warm and silky, the red canyon walls rising on all sides, the sound of the waterfall filling the air like continuous, gentle music. People report feeling in that moment as though they have arrived at the most beautiful place they have ever been. And they are right. The travertine terraces at Havasu Creek form naturally through a process that is slow and chemical and quietly beautiful. As water rich in dissolved calcium carbonate flows over rock and interacts with air, Tiny crystals of calcium carbonate precipitate out of the water and build up layer by infinitely thin layer into smooth curved dams of pale cream stone called travertine. Over decades and centuries, these dams grow taller, the pools behind them deeper, the waterfalls spilling over them more dramatic. The travertine is constantly changing, growing in some places, eroding in others, a living, breathing geological structure formed by nothing more than the quiet chemistry of water and mineral and time. Touch travertine, and it is surprisingly smooth beneath your fingers, soft-edged and slightly porous, still forming itself, still patient, still becoming. It is one of the most gentle and beautiful processes in all of geology. It asks only for water and time, and in return it makes something extraordinary. The Grand Canyon's age, that number of 5 to 6 million years, refers only to the canyon as we know it today. But the rocks within its walls are vastly, staggeringly older. The Vishnu schist at the canyon's base is approximately 1.74 billion years old, nearly half the age of the Earth itself. Imagine that for a moment in the softest possible way. Holding a rock that is 1.74 billion years old means holding something that formed when the entire history of animal life on Earth, every fish, every tree, every dinosaur, every flower, every sleeping human, still lay in the future. The universe had barely begun its second act. Stars were still forming that would eventually explode and scatter the iron and calcium and oxygen that would one day, in the most extraordinary chain of patient events, find its way into your blood and bones and the warm weight of your quiet, resting body. Among the many plants of the canyon's inner world, the desert willow holds a particular and gentle beauty. It grows along the dry stream beds and washes of the lower canyon, its long, narrow leaves trembling in the faintest breath of air, its flowers, pale lavender and cream and soft pink, blooming through the summer months in clusters that attract hummingbirds from miles around. The desert willow is not a true willow, it belongs to the same family as the trumpet vine, but it has the willow's quality of grace, of movement, of seeming to be always in gentle conversation with whatever air is present. On warm evenings, the desert willow's fragrance fills the canyon's lower reaches, sweet and faintly vanilla, warm and completely unhurried. Stand beneath one in the evening light, and the whole world slows down to match its gentle swaying. The canyon has many ways of teaching stillness. The desert willow is one of its kindest. The pale banded rock squirrel is one of the most visible and charming residents of the Grand Canyon's rim and upper trails. Small and alert, with a striped coat, the same warm brown and cream as the Kaibab limestone around it. The rock squirrel sits upright on boulders at overlook points, its bright eyes watching visitors with unabashed curiosity. They have lived alongside the canyon for as long as anyone can remember, carrying seeds in their soft cheek pouches from forest to forest, planting the next generation of trees in their travels without knowing or trying. Without the squirrel's patient, forgotten caches of seeds, many of the rim's trees would not exist in quite the same arrangement. The rock squirrel plants forests accidentally, through nothing more than hunger and forgetfulness, creating beauty without intention, contributing to the canyon's life simply by being small and hungry and alive. There is something very quietly lovely about that. The Grand Canyon receives approximately 6 million visitors every year from every country on Earth. And yet, standing at the rim on any given morning, particularly in the quiet early hours, it is entirely possible to feel completely alone with it. The canyon's sheer scale absorbs human presence the way the ocean absorbs a handful of sand, not indifferently, but with a kind of vast and generous accommodation. People arrive speaking dozens of languages, coming from wildly different cultures and climates and stories, and they all fall quiet at the edge. The canyon reduces everyone to the same simple and essential experience, the experience of being very small before something very ancient and very beautiful. It is one of the few places on Earth where this is uniformly, reliably, and completely true. Every language falls quiet, every background dissolves, every tired, complicated human story softens into one shared simple feeling, wonder and the deep rest that wonder brings. The light within the Grand Canyon moves throughout the day like a slow and painting conversation between the sun and the stone. Early morning brings cool blues and pale golds to the eastern walls, while the western walls remain shadowed and mysterious. Midday fills the canyon with a flat, brilliant clarity. Afternoon tips everything toward warmth, ochre and sienna, and the deep, dusty red of iron-rich sandstone glowing in slanted amber light. And then evening comes, and the light performs its most lavish generosity. The canyon walls bloom into colors for which the English language has not quite found adequate words. A rose that is also purple, a gold that carries the feeling of something ancient and deeply familiar, a shadow blue that holds the promise of rest. The canyon is constantly painting itself with the light of the day, and every hour's composition is never quite repeated. Each moment is singular. Each moment is a gift offered once, quietly, and then gently let go. The Grand Canyon's walls are read by geologists, the way a beloved book is read by a devoted reader. Slowly, carefully, with deep attention to every detail, and a willingness to sit with a single passage for a long time. Each rock layer has its own texture, its own color, its own fossil record, its own story of the climate and life and sea conditions that existed when it was formed. The Redwall limestone, that dramatic vertical cliff of deep red that forms one of the canyon's most visible and striking bands, is not naturally red at all. Its true color is a cool gray-blue. The red comes entirely from iron oxide, rust leaching down from the reddish supai group above, staining the gray limestone face over millions of years into the warm, deep crimson we see today. Even the canyon's most vivid colors are the result of slow, patient processes. Time doing what time does, quietly transforming everything it touches into something richer and more beautiful. Somewhere in the deep canyon, where the Colorado River bends around a great curve of ancient stone, there are beaches. Small, perfect crescents of fine red sand deposited by the river along its inner curves, soft and warm in the afternoon sun, backed by smooth, dark canyon walls and canopied by the narrow ribbon of bright blue sky overhead. River rafters camp on these beaches, spreading their sleeping bags on the warm sand under a sky filled with more stars than most people have ever seen at once. They fall asleep to the sound of the river moving close beside them, a low, continuous murmur like a very large and very calm thing breathing nearby. The sand holds the day's warmth long into the night, rising gently through the sleeping bag, keeping the body at exactly the right temperature for deep, complete, unhurried sleep. There is nowhere on Earth quite like a Grand Canyon River beach at midnight, under 10,000 stars. The ancient Puebloan people, sometimes called the ancestral Puebloans, lived within and around the Grand Canyon for thousands of years, leaving behind them a rich archive of stone structures, pottery fragments, pictographs, and carefully tended agricultural terraces that tell a story of extraordinary adaptation and deep, patient knowledge. Within the canyon's walls, tucked into sheltered alcoves and narrow ledges, their small stone granaries still stand, dry and intact after 800 years, their stone walls carefully chinked with adobe mortar the color of dried earth. Standing before one of these structures in the quiet of a canyon afternoon, you feel the extraordinary continuity of human presence in this landscape. The long, unbroken thread of people who loved this place, learned its moods and seasons, and chose to build their lives within its warm and sheltering stone. The canyon has always been a home. It has always been a place where life was possible and beautiful. Among the many minerals found within the canyon's stone, uranium deposits were discovered in the early 20th century, leading to a period of mining activity within the national park boundaries that has since ended. But the canyon also contains veins of copper, of silver, of asbestos, all of them mined at various periods in history, all of them now left in peace within the protected stone. The most beautiful mineral discovery in the canyon, perhaps, is the presence of azurite and malachite, vivid blue and green copper carbonates that stain certain rock faces in the inner canyon with colors so intense and pure they seem almost impossible against the surrounding reds and oranges. Azurite is a blue so deep it carries the quality of twilight, the color of the sky in the last 5 minutes before full dark, when everything is still and luminous and perfectly suspended between one state and another. The canyon contains every color the Earth knows how to make. The relationship between the Grand Canyon and water is not only geological, it is also intimate and daily and alive. Seeps and springs emerge from the canyon walls in dozens of places, each one supporting a small and vivid community of life that would not exist anywhere nearby in the surrounding dry desert. Maidenhair ferns grow in dense, trembling curtains around dripping springs, their delicate black stems and bright green fronds creating an oasis of cool, moist softness against the dry rock. Monkey flowers, small yellow and red blooms with petals shaped like grinning faces, grow densely around these wet places, their color almost shocking against the pale stone. The air near a canyon spring smells of water and green things, cool and slightly sweet, utterly distinct from the dry sage and sun-baked stone of the surrounding canyon. These small water gardens are among the most tenderly beautiful places in the canyon, each one a small, wet, glowing secret held carefully within the rock. The kaibab squirrel is found only on the Kaibab Plateau, the forested tableland that forms the north rim of the Grand Canyon, and nowhere else on Earth. It evolved in isolation, cut off from related squirrel populations on the south rim by the width and depth of the canyon itself, developing its own distinctive appearance over thousands of years. A white tail, brilliant against the dark forest floor, and small ear tufts that give it an expression of mild and permanent surprise. The kaibab squirrel is a small living demonstration of how the canyon shapes life, not just stone, but DNA, not just landscape, but species. The canyon is wide enough and deep enough to act as a boundary between worlds, allowing populations to diverge, to become themselves fully, to evolve into something that exists in this one place and nowhere else. The canyon creates uniqueness, it specializes in it, it has always made room for becoming. The Colorado River's journey through the Grand Canyon is bookended by two very different kinds of water. Above the canyon at Lake Powell, the vast reservoir created by Glen Canyon Dam, the river is still deep blue and almost perfectly calm. Below the canyon at Lake Mead, it stills again into another great turquoise lake. But in between, within the canyon's walls, the river is entirely itself, moving, turbulent, clear, unpredictable, full of life and sound, and ancient purposeful energy. The dams at either end have changed the river in significant ways. The water entering the canyon now runs clearer and colder than it once did, and this has altered the species that can survive within it. The humpback chub, a native fish shaped by millions of years of warm, turbid river conditions, now struggles to adapt to a cooler, clearer flow. The river's story, like all living stories, is ongoing, complicated, and quietly beautiful in its persistence. Lava Falls Rapid is considered the most powerful rapid in North America, a thundering, roaring, spectacular chaos of white water, where ancient lava flows once dammed the Colorado River entirely, backing it up into a lake hundreds of miles long before the water finally rose high enough to overtop and erode the volcanic dam. The rapid formed where the remnants of that ancient lava flow crossed the riverbed, creating a drop of 37 feet in less than 300 feet of river, steep, violent, and breathtaking. River guides speak of lava falls in hushed, almost reverent tones. But what is remarkable is what lies directly below it. A wide, still, glassy pool where the water spreads and slows and breathes out, and everything that was turbulent becomes quiet, the way all storms eventually exhaust themselves and give way to the most extraordinary stillness. After every rapid, the river finds its calm again. It always does. The night sky above the Grand Canyon is so spectacular that astronomers have identified it as one of the premier stargazing locations in the entire northern hemisphere. Far from the light pollution of cities, the air above the canyon's high plateau is extraordinarily clear and dry, perfect conditions for seeing deep into space with nothing but your own eyes. On a moonless night in summer, the zodiacal light is sometimes visible, a faint pyramidal glow rising along the ecliptic from the horizon, caused by sunlight reflecting off dust particles left behind by ancient comets in the plane of our solar system. It is one of the most subtle and beautiful things in the night sky, barely there, requiring total darkness and completely dark-adapted eyes to see. But when you see it, it feels like something ancient and vast and quiet has reached down and placed a hand very gently on your shoulder. The universe offering, very softly, its company. Ancient pictographs and petroglyphs made by indigenous peoples are found throughout the Grand Canyon, pressed, painted, and carved into rock faces in sheltered alcoves and along ancient travel routes. Some are simple geometric forms, spirals and concentric circles, handprints in red and white and warm ochre. Others are more complex, figures of people and animals, abstract symbols that archaeologists are still working to understand. The spiral is among the most common forms, and some scholars believe certain spiral petroglyphs were positioned deliberately to mark the solstices, the first light of the longest day falling precisely through a crack in the rock to illuminate the spiral's center. The people who made these marks knew this canyon in a depth and intimacy that goes far beyond what any visitor can achieve in a day or a week. They read its light, its seasons, its water, its stone, the way a person reads the face of someone deeply, quietly, and completely loved. One of the quietest and most extraordinary experiences available in the Grand Canyon is simply sitting still within it. Not hiking, not photographing, not doing anything at all, and listening to the sounds that emerge when your own movement ceases. At first, it seems silent. Then, gradually, the canyon fills with sound, the distant liquid call of a canyon wren spiraling downward, the soft rush of wind through a side canyon entrance, low and constant as breath, the tick of stone cooling in the shade after hours of sun, the faint high whistle of a swift cutting across a strip of sky overhead, a single drop of water falling from a seep into a shallow pool below, a sound so small and so clear, it carries a feeling of extraordinary precision. The canyon is full of sound when you are quiet enough to hear it, and hearing it you realize the world has never actually been silent. It has only been waiting for you to stop long enough to listen. The Grand Canyon has inspired an extraordinary wealth of art, music, poetry, and literature over the centuries. Yet artists consistently report that their work only partially captures what the canyon truly is. The painter Thomas Moran, whose luminous canvases of the canyon and the American West helped inspire the national park movement in the 19th century, described the canyon as essentially unpaintable, too vast, too complex, too suffused with light and shadow and geological grandeur for any canvas to contain. And yet he painted it anyway, returning again and again, each painting an honest and devoted attempt to hold just one moment of its endlessness still. That willingness to try to express something you know exceeds your grasp, to reach for the inexpressible with whatever tools you have, is itself a kind of beautiful and humble prayer. The canyon asks this of every person who loves it. Come close. Try to hold me. Know that you cannot. Come close anyway. The Grand Canyon's walls hold within them the compressed memory of ancient climates, ice ages and warm periods, wet eons and dry ones, seas and deserts cycling through the same patch of earth over and over across hundreds of millions of years. Geologists who study ancient climates, paleoclimatologists, read these rock layers the way a doctor reads a patient's long medical history, looking for patterns, surprises, moments of dramatic change. In the canyon's stone, they have found evidence of tropical seas, of glaciers, of vast monsoon systems that no longer exist. The Earth has always been in motion, always changing, always transforming, always moving through one phase into another. Nothing is fixed. Everything is in the slow, patient process of becoming something else. And yet through all of it, the stone remembers. The canyon holds the record. The Earth does not forget its own story, even when it cannot speak it aloud. In spring, when snowmelt from the Kaibab Plateau sends fresh water coursing through the canyon's side drainages, wildflowers bloom along the inner canyon trails in a brief and spectacular display. Indian paintbrush blazes orange-red against warm brown stone. Desert marigold opens its clean yellow faces to the morning sun. Sacred datura, the large white trumpet-shaped bloom sacred to many indigenous peoples, opens in the evening, releasing a sweetly heavy fragrance into the cooling night air, its petals glowing pale as moonlight. These flowers bloom for days or weeks at most, their entire life's purpose compressed into a brief, vivid, unhesitating offering of color and scent and seed. They do not wait for a better time. They do not wish they had longer. They simply open, completely and without reservation, in exactly the conditions they find themselves. There is a quiet and luminous wisdom in that, a lesson held in petals, an invitation toward full presence. The Colorado River carries sediment, sand, silt, and fine clay particles suspended in its current that once nourished the ecosystems of its lower reaches all the way to the Gulf of California. Before the construction of Glen Canyon Dam in 1966, the The river deposited more than 500,000 tons of sediment per day through the Grand Canyon, building and rebuilding its beaches, its sandbars, its complex shoreline ecosystems with every flood. The dam changed this. Most sediment now settles to the bottom of Lake Powell, and the river running through the canyon is clearer and sandier bankless than it once was. Controlled floods, carefully managed releases from the dam, have been used in recent decades to partially restore the canyon's beaches, moving sediment downstream and rebuilding some of what time and stone and slow, persistent water once built naturally. The canyon is still being cared for, still being listened to. It still has a great deal left to teach. Among the many phenomena is the temperature inversion, a weather condition in which a layer of warm air becomes trapped above a layer of cooler air, sealing a cloud layer within the canyon and filling it from rim to rim with a still, flat sea of fog. Seen from above, this inversion fog transforms the canyon entirely. Instead of a vast, layered abyss of stone and shadow, you see only a perfect, smooth, luminous white surface, the buttes and mesas rising from it like ancient islands in a pale Arctic ocean. The canyon disappears. The fog fills its place with a serene and otherworldly quiet. Visitors who arrive at the rim during an inversion event describe it as one of the most surreal and peaceful things they have ever witnessed. The most dramatic landscape on Earth transformed into pure, simple, gentle white, everything hidden, everything soft, everything temporarily and beautifully at rest. The canyon's colors shift not just with the light, but with the moisture in the air. On dry days with low humidity, the canyon walls appear sharp-edged and brilliantly colored. The reds vivid, the creams bright, the shadows deeply contrasted. On humid days or mornings after rain, a slight atmospheric haze softens all the distant edges into delicate gradients of pale blue and lavender, the far walls dissolving into the sky with the soft uncertainty of a watercolor wash. This effect, called aerial perspective, is the same phenomenon that makes distant mountains appear blue, that gives great landscapes their sense of limitless, breathing depth. In the canyon, aerial perspective turns distance itself into color. The further away the wall, the softer and bluer it becomes, until the most distant formations are nearly indistinguishable from the sky. Standing at the rim, you feel as though you are looking not just across space, but through it into a depth so tender and blue it feels like sleep. The Grand Canyon contains over 1,000 known archaeological sites, and researchers believe many more remain undiscovered in its most remote and sheltered corners. These sites range from small temporary camps used by hunter-gatherers passing through thousands of years ago, to multi-room stone structures built by the ancestral Puebloans, to the intricate split-twig figurines, tiny deer and bighorn sheep twisted from a single willow twig found in dry caves deep within the canyon walls. Some of these figurines are 4,000 years old, and they are among the oldest artifacts found anywhere in North America. Who made them, and exactly why, remains a matter of gentle and ongoing scholarly inquiry. But the care evident in their making, the patience, the precision, the love of form, is unmistakable across 4 millennia. Someone sat in a sheltered canyon cave 4,000 years ago, patiently bending a willow twig into the shape of something beautiful. And the canyon kept it safe all this time. The sky above the Grand Canyon is its own landscape, vast and three-dimensional and constantly performing. Summer afternoons bring towering cumulonimbus clouds that build above the plateau with staggering speed, their tops reaching 40,000 feet into the atmosphere, their bases dark and purple with rain. Lightning strikes the canyon's rim in brilliant, branching white threads, followed seconds later by the deep, rolling thunder that fills the whole canyon like a slow, enormous drum. Then the rain arrives, heavy, warm, smelling of wet stone and sage, and within minutes it is over, the clouds dissolving, the sky returning to a blue so deep and clean it looks freshly washed. The summer thunderstorms of the Grand Canyon are not frightening. They are magnificent and brief and deeply alive, and after they pass, the air is so clean and bright and full of petrichor and quiet that the whole world feels entirely renewed. Bighorn sheep navigate the Grand Canyon's seemingly impossible terrain with a sureness and grace that leaves human observers speechless. Their hooves are split into 2 toes that can move independently, with hard outer edges for gripping rock and soft inner pads for friction on smooth surfaces. a perfect evolutionary solution to a landscape of near-vertical stone. Bighorn sheep have been seen crossing cliff faces that appear to offer no purchase at all, no ledge wider than a hand's width, no slope less than 60 degrees, moving quickly and completely without apparent anxiety along routes that would send any human climbing team reaching for ropes and anchors. They know the canyon's walls the way the canyon wren knows its corridors of air, completely, intimately, without doubt. To watch a bighorn sheep move through the canyon is to see the canyon from the inside. To understand that what looks impossible from the outside has always been, for those who truly belong here, simply home. The sound of the Grand Canyon at night, particularly on a windless night in the inner canyon, far from any trail, is a sound unlike any other in the world. It is not silence exactly. The river provides a constant, low background murmur. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl calls once and does not repeat itself. A warm breeze moves through the cottonwood trees above Bright Angel Creek with a papery, sleepy rustling. But beneath these sounds is something else, a quality of quiet so deep and so old, it seems less like the absence of noise and more like the presence of something vast and calm and completely beyond the range of human hearing. Scientists who study natural soundscapes have described this quality as baseline, the Earth's own ambient tone present everywhere, but perceptible only in places this remote and this ancient. In the inner canyon at night, you can hear the baseline of the world, and it sounds remarkably like rest. The Grand Canyon's ecosystem supports an extraordinary web of life, from the tiniest desert microorganisms to the largest predators, mountain lions. Large, quiet, copper-colored cats move through the canyon's rim forests and upper trails at night, covering enormous distances in their patient, solitary patrols. They are rarely seen, preferring the deep forest and the cover of darkness, moving with a fluid grace so complete it seems almost liquid, the way a shadow moves across a wall when a cloud passes over the sun. To know that mountain lions are there, somewhere in the warm dark beyond the firelight, is not frightening. It is deeply and quietly reassuring. The food web is intact. The predator is in its place. The ecosystem is whole and functioning, and breathing in the way it was designed to breathe. Everything connected, everything necessary, everything quietly, perfectly in balance. Scientists studying the canyon's geology have discovered that the Colorado Plateau, the vast tableland of which the Grand Canyon is a part, has been rising very slowly for millions of years, lifted by forces deep within the Earth's mantle. As the plateau rose, the Colorado River cut downward to maintain its gradient, like a saw blade that keeps pressing lower as the wood rises toward it. This process, called isostatic uplift, means that the canyon is still being carved today, not just by the river, but by the slow, enormous, imperceptible rising of the land itself. The Grand Canyon is not finished. It is not a monument to something completed. It is an ongoing process, a living, slow, extraordinary event that began millions of years ago and will continue long after every human trace has dissolved back into the patient earth. We are watching it mid-sentence. We are witnessing a story that is still beautifully being written. The rim of the Grand Canyon is edged in places by smooth, white outcroppings of kaibab limestone worn by wind, and the patient touch of millions of hands into surfaces as smooth as old bone. Sit on one of these outcroppings in the late afternoon and the warm stone rises into your body like a gentle embrace, holding the sun's heat from hours earlier, radiating it softly into tired muscles, into the long bones of the legs, into the base of the spine. The rock is warm the way old things are warm, not hot, not uncomfortable, but deep warm, steady warm, the kind of warmth that asks nothing from you except that you stay a little longer. Stone this old has absorbed 10,000 years of sunsets. It holds them gently. And when you sit on it and let your eyes drift closed, and the warm stone gives its quiet heat to your body, and the canyon opens before you like the world's greatest held breath, you understand without words what it means to be held. John Wesley Powell was the first person to lead an expedition through the length of the Grand Canyon by river in 1869, with 9 men in 4 wooden boats, navigating rapids that no one had ever seen and could not possibly have prepared for, with no knowledge of what lay around the next bend. Powell had lost his right arm in the Civil War and wore a prosthetic. and he navigated the river's roaring chaos with one arm and extraordinary courage and a scientist's burning, joyful curiosity about every rock face and fossil bed and geologic formation he passed. His journals from the expedition are among the most beautiful pieces of nature writing in American literature, full of wonder and precise observation and a poet's deep love for the world he was moving through. Powell named many features of the canyon that still bear his chosen names today. He gave the canyon words, and the words were worthy of the stone. That is a rare and beautiful kind of gift. The Grand Canyon's atmosphere holds a quality that scientists and visitors alike have struggled to name precisely. A combination of scale, age, light, and silence that produces something close to what psychologists call awe. Awe is a distinct emotional state, measurable in the body. It slows the heart rate, deepens the breath, quiets the default mode network of the brain, that restless, self-referential chatter that occupies so much of our waking mental life. Studies have shown that experiences of awe reduce inflammation in the body, improve mood, increase feelings of connection to others, and promote a sense of meaning and purpose that can last for weeks after a single powerful encounter. The Grand Canyon is perhaps the single most reliable awe-producing location on Earth. It has been producing this effect in human beings for thousands of years. And tonight, drifting through it in words and memory and imagination, perhaps some small portion of that awe is quietly finding its way into your body right now, softening what was tight, deepening what was shallow, stilling what was restless. The Colorado River carries within it a population of native fish found nowhere else on Earth, species that evolved over millions of years in the specific conditions of this wild, warm, turbid river. The humpback chub is perhaps the most distinctive, a small, silvery fish with a pronounced fleshy hump behind its head, which scientists believe helped it navigate the turbulent currents of the pre-dam Colorado. The razorback sucker has a sharp, blade-like ridge along its back, another evolutionary adaptation to strong currents. These fish are living relics of a very different Colorado River, warmer, redder, more turbulent, and their survival today is the result of dedicated conservation work by people who understood that the loss of a species evolved over millions of years is an irreplaceable diminishment of the world's quiet richness. To know these fish still swim in the canyon's deep green water is to feel a particular warmth, the warmth of something ancient and precious being carefully, lovingly kept. The sky islands of the Grand Canyon's rim, the cool, forested buttes and mesas that rise above the general plateau level, support plant and animal communities found nowhere else so close to the desert below. Relict populations of plants from the last ice age survive in these cool, elevated refuges, ancient species that once covered a much larger range, now clinging to their sky islands as the climate warmed and their world shrank around them. The concept of a sky island is one of the most poignant in ecology, a population of living things surrounded not by water but by heat and dryness, isolated on its elevated cool island, adapting slowly to its small and bordered world. Each sky island community is unique, the product of its particular history and isolation. Each one holds species and genetic combinations found nowhere else. Each one is a small, irreplaceable, quietly extraordinary library of life. The canyon does not only hold geological history, it holds biological history too, with the same patient and faithful care. The Supai group, those warm, deep red layers visible in the canyon's middle walls, was formed from ancient river deltas, floodplains, and tidal flats that existed along the edge of a continent that no longer has that shape. Between 270 and 315 million years ago, this part of what is now Arizona lay near the equator in a humid, subtropical climate, very different from the dry, high desert of today. Insects flew in that ancient air. Amphibians moved through its swamps and shallow waters. Early reptiles, the first animals fully freed from dependence on water for reproduction, explored its warm, flat shores. All of that long, warm, teeming life eventually compressed into the quiet red stone we see today. Those rich layers of iron and mud and ancient memory stacked in the canyon's walls like the pages of a story that never needed to be loud to be extraordinary. The red speaks its history softly, in color rather than sound. There is a trail at the Grand Canyon called the Nankoweap, one of the most remote and challenging routes in the entire park system. descending from the north rim into a wild and rarely visited section of the canyon, far from the popular south rim infrastructure. Those who complete it describe it as an experience of complete immersive solitude, days of walking through a landscape that feels genuinely untouched, where the absence of other human presence is not loneliness, but a deep and nourishing spaciousness. Along the Nankoweap Trail, ancient ancestral Puebloan granaries are built into a high ledge in the canyon wall, small, perfectly constructed stone rooms that still hold their shape after 800 years. Reaching them requires a steep scramble up a narrow path, but from their ledge, the view of the canyon and the Colorado River below is one of the most magnificent and private in the entire Southwest. A place where the world is very large and your thoughts grow very, very quiet. The junction of the Colorado River and the Little Colorado River, a turquoise tributary that joins the main river in the Eastern Canyon, creates one of the most visually stunning moments in the entire Grand Canyon landscape. The Little Colorado runs a vivid, milky turquoise blue, colored by dissolved calcium carbonate from the springs that feed it, and when it meets the green-brown Colorado, the two rivers run side by side for a short distance before merging, their different colors visible as distinct ribbons in the same channel. The confluence is a sacred site to the Hopi and Navajo peoples, who call it Sipapu, the place of emergence where, according to their sacred traditions, the first people emerged from the world below into this world. Standing at the confluence on a calm morning, watching those two differently colored rivers find their way toward one another and slowly, beautifully become one. It is impossible not to feel the resonance of that sacred name. Every confluence is a becoming. Every meeting is a kind of emergence into something new. The process of erosion that created the Grand Canyon continues today, though at a pace so slow it is imperceptible to any human lifetime. Every rainstorm loosens a few more grains from the canyon's walls. Every freeze-thaw cycle in winter pries open a few more cracks in the rim's limestone. Every flood event moves sediment a little further downstream. The canyon is, in the most literal sense, still being made. Scientists estimate that the Colorado River erodes roughly 1 millimeter of rock from the canyon floor every 1,000 years, a rate so slow it makes the slowest human patients seem frantic by comparison. 1 millimeter in 1,000 years, and yet, given enough of those thousands, the result is a canyon, a mile deep and 18 miles wide and 277 miles long. The arithmetic of patience is extraordinary. The canyon is its proof. Tonight, whatever you are waiting for, whatever is still forming in your life, 1 millimeter at a time, is enough. It is more than enough. The Grand Canyon's ecology includes a thriving community of reptiles, creatures perfectly adapted to the canyon's warm stone and dry air, spending their days absorbing the sun's energy through their scales and their nights tucked beneath warm boulders or in the narrow shelter of rock crevices. The collared lizard, vivid green with a bold black and white neck marking, perches on high rocks in the full noon sun, watching for insects with sharp, bright eyes, then sprinting across the hot ground on its hind legs in short, startling bursts of speed. Chuck Wallace. Large, plump lizards with wrinkled skin and calm, unhurried movements wedge themselves into rock crevices when threatened, inflating their bodies with air so they cannot be pulled out, an elegant solution using the canyon's own stone as armor. These reptiles have found perfect and complete contentment in the canyon's warm walls and bright sun. They ask only for warmth and stillness, and in return they fill the canyon with a quiet, sun-drenched life. The Havasupai tribe has managed and protected Havasu Canyon and its extraordinary waterfalls for hundreds of years, maintaining trails, welcoming visitors by foot through the 10-mile approach hike, and preserving the natural integrity of the travertine pools and their remarkable color. The canyon trail into Supai village descends through walls of deep red and cream sandstone into a narrowing gorge that opens suddenly into a wide, cottonwood-shaded valley of extraordinary beauty. The sound of water growing louder with every step, the air cooling as you descend, the red walls rising on all sides like the walls of the most beautiful room ever made. The Havasupai people have always understood that the beauty of this place is not incidental to their life here. It is their life inseparable from their identity, their spiritual practice, their sense of who they are and what they are responsible for. The canyon gave them everything. They give it everything in return. The Grand Canyon Skywalk, a horseshoe-shaped glass bridge extending 70 feet beyond the canyon's western rim over a drop of more than 4,000 feet, was built in collaboration with the Hualapai tribe on land within their reservation adjacent to the national park. Standing on the skywalk's transparent glass floor, the canyon opens beneath your feet in a vertiginous, extraordinary display of depth and color and ancient stone that bypasses thinking entirely and speaks directly to the body. Most visitors grip the railing instinctively, then slowly, as the seconds pass, release their grip and simply stand on the glass, looking down into 4,000 feet of open, layered, luminous air. The experience is not frightening for long. It becomes, within minutes, something else entirely. A direct, physical, total confrontation with the canyon's depth that produces not fear, but a kind of absolute, full-body wonder. You stop thinking, you simply feel the depth beneath you and breathe. The rock art of the canyon's indigenous peoples sometimes depicts the same imagery that appears in their oral traditions, stories of migrations, of seasons, of the movements of animals and the behaviors of weather, pressed into stone as a form of memory more permanent than any spoken word. The spiral appearing again and again in canyon rock art is associated in many indigenous traditions with the sun's movement, with journeys, with the cycle of seasons, with the path of water finding its way downward through the stone. It is among the oldest human symbols on Earth found in rock art on every inhabited continent, recognized across all cultures and eras as a shape with deep and resonant meaning. Perhaps because it mirrors so many things we love and recognize: the curl of a fern frond, the center of a galaxy, the whorl of a fingerprint, the slow turning of a sleeping body finding its most comfortable position in the dark. The spiral is the shape of things becoming. It is the shape of rest. In the deep, sheltered side canyons of the Grand Canyon's western reaches, where few trails exist and fewer still travel, there are places where the canyon walls narrow to just a few feet across, and the sky above becomes a thin, bright ribbon of blue, places called slot canyons, where the stone has been carved by flash floods into sinuous, swirling, impossibly smooth corridors of warm orange and rose and cream. The walls of these slot canyons bear the marks of every flood that shaped them, smooth flowing curves worn into the stone by water-carrying sand, creating surfaces that seem almost alive, like the inside of a slow, breathing shell. Light entering from above bounces and reflects between the curved walls, building to an extraordinary warm glow that suffuses everything in amber and gold and deepest rose. In a slot canyon, you are inside the canyon's most intimate self, wrapped in warm stone and warm light, the world entirely simplified, entirely beautiful, entirely and completely still. The phenomenon of canyon acoustics has been studied by researchers interested in how ancient peoples may have chosen locations for ceremony based on their sonic qualities. Certain alcoves and amphitheater-shaped spaces within the canyon walls create remarkable natural reverberation. A single handclap echoes back and forth between the smooth stone walls in a long musical decay that can last several seconds, each reflection slightly softer than the last, fading into pure silence with a quality that is deeply satisfying to hear. Drumming in these spaces creates a rich, layered, resonant sound that wraps around the listener completely. Some researchers believe that indigenous peoples deliberately used acoustically exceptional canyon spaces for ceremony, that the stone's musical response was understood as a quality worth seeking, a sign that a place had special resonance, sound and stone in conversation. The canyon listening and singing quietly back. The world always has been more musical than it first appears. The full moon rises over the Grand Canyon approximately once each month, and those who have been present for a moonrise at the rim describe it as a sight of extraordinary, heart-opening beauty. The moon appears enormous as it clears the eastern horizon, golden and warm and seemingly close enough to touch, and as it rises, its light spills slowly into the canyon, filling the upper walls with a soft silver illumination while the depths remain dark and mysterious far below. In full moonlight, the canyon takes on a completely different character. The colors desaturated to pale silver and gray blue, the shadows deeper and more mysterious, the whole landscape transformed into something from a dream, soft and luminous and suffused with a quality of gentle ancient magic. The stars fade near the moon but remain visible further from its glow. The canyon breathes in the moonlight. Everything grows quiet, and the night, which seemed simply dark before, reveals itself as full of a very soft and beautiful light. The Colorado River's water, as it flows through the canyon today, is considerably colder than it was before the construction of Glen Canyon Dam. The dam releases water from the deep bottom of Lake Powell, where the temperature stays around 47 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, much colder than the natural river once was. This cold, clear water has transformed the ecology of the canyon's river environment in ways both challenging and unexpected. Some native species have struggled, others have adapted. Rainbow trout, not native to the canyon, but thriving in the cold, clear conditions have established themselves in the river, creating a remarkable trout fishery in the heart of the desert. The river's story, like the canyon's story, is one of constant, patient adaptation. Life finding its footing in changed conditions, new balances slowly forming, the system moving always towards some new and functional wholeness. Change moves through the canyon like water, always finding its level, always eventually at rest. One of the most beloved overlooks on the South Rim is Desert View, at the canyon's eastern end, marked by the Desert View Watchtower, a circular stone tower designed by architect Mary Coulter in 1932 to evoke the ancient watchtowers built by the ancestral Puebloans throughout the canyon country. Coulter incorporated stones from the canyon's own walls into the tower's construction and covered its interior with murals painted in the style of Hopi art, creating a building that feels genuinely rooted in its landscape, as though it grew from the stone rather than being placed upon it. From the watchtower's upper windows, the view east toward the Navajo Nation and the painted desert is extraordinary. A wide, warm, layered panorama of mesas and distant buttes dissolving into the horizon in shades of purple and rose and the softest blue. It is a view that goes on, further than the eye can follow, until the land and sky become one continuous, gentle, breathing thing. The process of photosynthesis, that quiet, daily miracle by which plants convert sunlight into food, has been occurring within the Grand Canyon for hundreds of millions of years. The algal mats and microbial communities that once carpeted ancient seafloors within what is now the canyon stone were among the earliest photosynthetic organisms on Earth, and their work releasing oxygen into the atmosphere gradually transformed our entire planet into a place where complex animal life became possible. Every breath you take tonight contains oxygen that was, in part, produced by ancient life that once lived in the waters that eventually became the Grand Canyon's stone. Your breath is connected to those ancient seafloors. Your body is built from oxygen that has been cycling through living things for billions of years. You are not separate from the canyon story. You are woven into it, made of the same patient chemistry, breathing the same ancient air. The Grand Canyon in autumn, October and November, has a particular quality of light and air that many visitors consider the most beautiful of any season. The summer crowds have thinned. The air has cooled to a perfect temperature, warm in the sun, pleasantly cool in the shade, the kind of temperature that feels like the Earth's way of saying you are welcome here just as you are. The canyon's rim trees turn gold and amber, the gamble oaks blazing orange against the deep green of the ponderosa pine, their fallen leaves collecting in the crevices of the pale limestone rim in small golden drifts. The sky deepens to an intense cobalt blue that seems almost too vivid, too saturated to be entirely real. And the canyon itself, in this clear, angled autumn light, reveals its layers with extraordinary precision, each band of color sharper and more defined, as though the canyon has dressed in its finest for the season's last great performance before winter arrives to wrap it in quiet white. The canyon's great depth creates its own local weather, gentle updrafts rising along sun-warmed walls throughout the day, carrying moisture and warmth from the inner canyon to the rim, where it contributes to the formation of afternoon clouds. These canyon-generated thermals are what the ravens and condors and swifts ride so effortlessly, invisible elevators of warm, rising air that lift them from the canyon floor to the rim without a single wing beat, purely through the physics of warm air expanding and rising against cooler air above. On warm afternoons, you can sometimes see small clouds forming directly above the canyon walls, tiny, brilliant white puffs of condensation born from the canyon's own exhaled warmth rising into the cooler air above. The canyon breathes, its breath becomes clouds. Its clouds become rain. Its rain becomes the river becomes the canyon. Everything in the natural world is one long, continuous, patient, circular becoming. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost. Everything returns. The silence of the Grand Canyon has been measured, studied, and described in scientific literature, and the results are remarkable. In areas well away from the rim's visitor infrastructure, the noise floor drops to levels equivalent to the quietest recording studios ever built. Natural quiet, so profound that visitors report experiencing a phenomenon called acoustic rest, in which the auditory system, no longer taxed by the constant low-level noise of modern life, enters a state of deep relaxation that spreads quickly through the entire nervous system. The canyon silence is not just the absence of noise. It is an active, healing presence, a deep, ancient quiet that the body responds to with immediate and profound relief, the way parched earth responds to the first drops of summer rain. In the canyon silence, the body remembers what it is like to be fully at rest. It remembers something it knew long before roads and cities and constant sound. It remembers what quiet actually feels like, and it exhales completely, for the first time in a very long while. The colors of the Grand Canyon's stone derive almost entirely from the minerals within them, and the chemistry of those minerals tells its own quiet story. The reds and oranges come from iron oxide, the same compound that makes blood red, that makes autumn leaves glow, that tints the dust of Mars into its famous blush. The creams and whites come from calcium carbonate, the mineral that builds coral reefs and seashells, and the delicate lattice of your own bones. The gray-greens of the bright angel shale come from iron in a different chemical form, reduced rather than oxidized, a color born from the absence of oxygen in ancient deep-water sediments. You are made of the same elements as the canyon's walls. The iron in your blood and the iron in its stone are cousins, atoms forged in ancient stars and scattered through the universe to find their way, eventually into both the Earth's most magnificent landscape and the quiet, living warmth of your resting body. The feeling of arriving at the Grand Canyon for the first time is famously difficult to describe, and first-time visitors consistently report being unable to immediately absorb what they are seeing. The brain, which normally uses prior experience to interpret visual information, has no adequate reference point for the canyon scale. It sees something that looks like a painting or a backdrop, something beautiful but not entirely real, and then slowly, over minutes, begins to understand that it is looking at actual physical space, that the tiny thing far below is a real river, that the wedge of shadow in the far distance is a real canyon wall miles away. This gradual dawning of the canyon's reality is one of the most distinctive and beloved experiences it produces. A slow recognition that the world is larger and more extraordinary than your prior experience had prepared you to expect. The canyon expands you. It literally, gently makes more room inside you for wonder. And wonder, as every sleeping body knows, is the quietest possible path to rest. The Grand Canyon at dawn, seen from the rim as the first light moves across its layered walls, has the quality of a slow, silent symphony, each section of the canyon's geography illuminated in sequence as the sun's angle steepens, each new band of color emerging from shadow the way a musical theme emerges from silence. The Kaibab limestone at the top catches the light first, glowing a warm, pale gold, then the Toroweap formation below it, then the Coconino sandstone, each layer coming into its own color as the light descends. By the time the sun has fully risen, the entire canyon is performing, warm reds and oranges pulsing against cool shadows. The river far below catching glints of silver light between its walls, the sky above deepening from rose to gold to the clear, deep blue of a perfectly clean morning. The canyon conducts this symphony every single day without fail for an audience of whoever chooses to arrive early enough to receive it. Today, quietly, that audience is you. When astronauts return from extended missions in space, they describe an experience called the overview effect, a profound, perspective-shifting recognition seen from orbit of the Earth's fragility and beauty and wholeness. Standing at the Grand Canyon's rim produces a terrestrial version of this effect. A sudden, clear, wordless understanding that the world is both vastly larger and more ancient than daily life suggests, and that the human life lived within it is precious and brief and worthy of the most tender attention. The canyon offers perspective not from above, but from within. You stand on the rim and look out, and the ordinary scale of things dissolves, and what remains is something essential, the knowledge that you are alive, that the earth is extraordinary, that this moment, this precise and unrepeatable moment is happening, is real, is yours completely. The canyon gives you back the world, clean and wide and full of color, full of stone and silence, and the slow, patient grace of deep time, full of a beauty that needs no explanation, no justification, no words at all. Every grain of sand on the floor of the Grand Canyon has been on an extraordinary journey. From its origin as solid rock somewhere in the mountains of the American West, through the slow processes of weathering and erosion, down the slopes of ancient hills in trickles of rainwater, into streams, into rivers, carried downstream through canyons and across plateaus over thousands and millions of years, worn smooth and smaller with every mile of travel, until it came to rest here on a quiet sandy beach beside the Colorado River, deep in the heart of the most magnificent canyon on Earth. Each grain carries the whole history of the continent in its mineral structure. Each one is a tiny, self-contained biography of the patient, relentless, beautiful processes that made the world into the extraordinary place it is. We are all like those grains, in a way worn smooth by our journeys, carried by forces larger than ourselves, arriving where we arrive not by plan but by the patient, gentle, inevitable logic of the world's own slow and loving gravity. You are here. You have arrived. And the canyon, ancient and vast and full of the deepest quiet, receives you exactly as you are. And so we arrive, gently and slowly, at the closing edges of our journey through this ancient and extraordinary place. 100 quiet stories, 100 soft windows into the Grand Canyon's vast and patient world. And yet we have barely touched the surface of what it holds. The canyon is always more than any telling of it. It always will be. There is one final thing worth carrying with you into sleep tonight, a fact so simple and so large that it holds within it everything else we have visited. The Grand Canyon is not merely a place. It is a record. A living, breathing, slowly changing record of almost 2 billion years of Earth's story, of seas rising and falling, of mountains forming and dissolving, of life beginning in darkness and gradually, beautifully, finding its way toward light and complexity and wonder. Every layer of stone is a chapter. Every fossil is a word. Every color in those ancient walls is a feeling the earth once had, preserved with extraordinary faithfulness in mineral and form. And the canyon is still writing. Right now, in the deep darkness of this night, the Colorado River is moving through the inner gorge, carrying its small cargo of sand and mineral, pressing gently against ancient stone, adding its infinitesimal contribution to a story that will continue long after every human structure on the surface of the earth has dissolved back into the patient ground. The canyon does not hurry its ending. It has no ending planned. It simply continues, in the way that the best and most beautiful things continue, not by force of will, but by the quiet, faithful persistence of their own essential nature. What the Grand Canyon gives to every person who encounters it, whether standing at its rim in the warm afternoon air, or floating through its deepest corridors on the green Colorado, or simply resting here tonight, listening in the soft dark, is the gift of perspective. The generous, liberating, deeply restful understanding that the world is older than our worries, wider than our plans, and more beautiful than our most vivid imaginings. That the things we think are permanent are temporary, and the things we think are temporary, love, wonder, the quality of a single patient breath, are the most enduring things of all. The Grand Canyon holds all of time in its quiet walls. And tonight, without knowing it, perhaps you have held a little of the canyon in you, a little of its red stone patience, a little of its vast and unrushed quiet, a little of the peace that comes from knowing that the earth has always known what it was doing, that everything that needs to happen has always been happening, one slow and faithful layer at a time. Rest now, as the canyon rests deeply, completely, in the warm knowledge that you are exactly where you are meant to be. And so, very gently, our journey through the Grand Canyon comes to its soft and quiet close. 277 miles of ancient river corridor, 2 billion years of patient stone, 100 small windows into a world so vast and so extraordinary that even the longest night could not contain it fully. And yet here we are, arrived, together, at the still and restful edge of sleep. If you have felt something settle in you tonight, some tightness loosening in the chest, some busy corner of the mind growing quieter, some part of you that was braced against the world finally, gratefully releasing, that is the canyon's gift. It does not keep it for itself. It gives it freely to anyone who arrives with an open and willing heart, whether on foot at the rim or resting here in the gentle dark, listening. You do not need to go anywhere to carry the canyon's peace. It is already in you now, in the memory of those layered walls glowing amber and rose in the evening light, in the sound of the Colorado River moving steadily through its ancient corridor, in the image of a condor riding an invisible thermal in wide, effortless circles above a mile of open air. These images are yours. They will be there when you need them, in the difficult mornings, in the restless afternoons, in any moment when the world feels too fast, or too loud, or too close. Close your eyes and the canyon will be there, wide and warm and patient, holding its 2 billion years of quiet for you like a gift kept safe. If tonight's journey brought you peace, we would be so grateful if you shared Science for Bedtime with someone else who needs a little stillness in their life. And if you would like to spend more quiet nights exploring the world's most extraordinary places, please do subscribe. We will always be here, waiting with something slow and beautiful and true. For now, let your breath fall into its own natural rhythm, slow and easy, like the Colorado River in its wide, calm stretches between the rapids. Let your body grow heavy and warm, held by whatever soft surface is beneath you, the way the canyon stone holds centuries of sunlight. Let your thoughts drift and thin and dissolve, the way the canyon's evening colors dissolve into the soft, forgiving dark. The canyon is resting now. The river is moving quietly through the night. The stars above the North Rim are blazing in their millions, cold and clean and impossibly beautiful. And somewhere in the warm dark of the inner gorge, a canyon wren is tucked into a sheltered crack in the ancient stone, its small heart beating slowly, its feathers perfectly still. The world is at peace tonight. And so, completely and deeply. Are you? Good night and sleep deeply.